Liz Ann Saunders, which of these numbers had the most influence on the financial markets over the past 6 months?
I think overall economic growth. Not so much inflation, because I think certainly the Fed is focused more on economic growth and that they want to make a preemptive move to strike against inflation. I think that will continue to be a factor going into the second half of the year.
How do you expect that growth to be in the second half?
A lot of it really depends on the consumer. Consumer confidence has really been growing quite rapidly, and the consumer has represented such a good component of economic growth that I really think that that has to be the component that hangs in there in order for economic growth to remain as strong as it has.
John Dessauer, what's your answer?
Well, I think the interest rate picture had a great deal to do with the financial market performance and the fact that rates did not go up in the United States and went down most everywhere else in the world.
And you've already indicated you expect them to continue further down. Why don't you put a number on it? Where do you expect those rates to go?
I think the Fed's going to have to take back the quarter and give up another quarter sometime in the next 12 months, and I would guess that the long bond will be heading down towards 5 or 5 1/4 by the time we see the snowfall and this coming winter.
Let me make sure I understand the first part of your answer. You think that the short-term federal funds rate will come down?
A half a point from where it is right now.
So it'll be lower than it was at the start of this year?
Exactly. Just like 1984.
All righty. Brian Rogers?
Lou, I'm with Liz Ann. I think growth is the most important thing that we've seen this year and has had the most impact on the markets. But I think it's not just been the U.S. I think it's the perception that global growth is picking up in terms of the Asian markets and Japan and Latin America, and the crisis we had last fall that caused so many people to worry appears to be dissipating. And so I think it's global growth that's been a positive for the U.S. markets.
Laszlo?
Well, I also agree with Liz Ann, but I think it's because the consumer is confident, the consumer is flush, and the consumer is fueling this market. We continue to see buying by individuals, both directly and indirectly through funds. So as long as growth is there, the consumers are going to be confident and he's going to keep spending money on the stock market.
What would be your growth forecast for the rest of the year?
I guess I'm still in the 3.5% range.
And you think that's perfectly tolerable for the Fed and for the markets?
Yes, sir.
All righty, and now in keeping with the spirit of our 4th of July party, let's see how hot these hot dogs were in giving you last New Year's their recommended investments for 1999. In what is traditionally the absolute toughest competition anywhere in investing, we ask our panelists each New Year's Eve to submit their best stock recommendations for the year ahead, a list that they are not allowed to alter for any reason for the next 12 months. Liz Ann Saunders, in just your second year as a panelist, you're running first among all 25 panelists as a stock picker. You were notably overcautious in your Dow predictions, forecasting a high of just 10,300. We're already more than 800 points above that one, and a low more than 900 points below the actual low, at least so far, of 9120.67. But oh, your stocks. As computed by our friends at Bloomberg Financial Markets, none of the 11 stocks you picked show a loss, a feat unmatched by any other panelist this year. And your average gain of more than 45%, more than doubled the Dows and tripled the S&Ps. So way to go, Liz Ann.
Thank you.
John Dessauer, you spend lots of time in Switzerland, but there is nothing cheesy about your stock picking performance. You too were overly grim about the Dow's chances. Your low prediction, for example, was 76.45, though of course we do have 6 months still to go. Your list of 8 stocks showed a total return of 43.8% and featured a near triple in LSI Logic, which Laszlo also picked, and which trailed only Tom Gallagher's EchoStar Communications as the single best recommendation of all. So again, John, willkommen. Brian Rogers, you've joined Liz Ann in debuting on a mid-year program, though you were even gloomier about the Dow, which you thought wouldn't even reach 10,000 in 1999. But I think people will forgive that if you keep giving them specific winners, and that you surely did. Your 10 recommendations are up an average 42.2% in 6 months. So congratulations. Keep charging. Laszlo Birinyi, we may have to make this a permanent invitation to you. Not only have your consistently excellent stock selections earned you a place in the Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser Hall of Fame, but you seem determined not ever to take a breather and give the rest of the crowd a chance. Your Dow high prediction of 12,010 was the highest of any panelist and is looking less silly all the time. And your low forecast of 9,000 is running second only to Frank Cappiello's 9,200. And on this hot 4th of July weekend, your dazzling dozen of stocks are up a cool 41.4%. So whatever you're drinking, please don't stop. But enough of this praise. What have these people done for us lately? For starters, here's their chance to wipe the egg off their faces and update their predictions for the Dow, giving us their latest and, where necessary, appropriately revised forecasts for the second half of 1999. Liz Ann Saunders.
Well, I suppose I should add a few points to my high and close. I'll add, say, 2,000 points to the high and say maybe 12,300 to 500. Probably close a little bit lower than that, maybe about 12,000. And we might end up selling off back down to around the 10,000 level.
John?
I'm not going to disagree a whole lot. I'm going to choose as a high 11,900, not quite making the 12,000 mark. And for the close, a little bit lower, 11.5. And I think we will go down and test the 10,000 level at some point. So I'm going to say 9,800 for the low.
Brian?
Lou, I'm going to say our high will be 11,400, and in my opinion, we're almost there, with a low of 9,000 and a close of 9,750.
Laszlo?
Well, I'm going to stay with my high. I think that we might go down to 10,500 again, and I expect that we'll probably close near the high, near 12,000.
All righty. And now with our usual warning that even investment all-stars like these could occasionally, dare I say it, strike out. Let's ask these sluggers to try to hit some second-half home runs for us by revealing the specific investments they are now recommending for the rest of 1999. Liz Ann?
I like, of names not on my list currently, I like WorldCom. And for some of the smaller stocks, I like Harley-Davidson, Sylvan Learning Systems, EMC, BMC Software.
Any thread to that list?
Not terribly much. Obviously, there's still a technology theme there and kind of innovation and even an internet theme there. So I still have that focus in the portfolio.
John?
Well, I'd like to go and pick up some of the stock that did rather poorly in the first half. Mm-hmm. And one of the poorest performers in the S&P 500 was Rite Aid, so I would add that to the list. And in the banking sector, where I still think there's some excitement to go, I would pick Union Planters now. And on the other side of the list, I'd raise a caution flag about two of my stocks that did really well, Citigroup and LSI Logic.
Sell them?
I would sell and switch into Union Planters and Rite Aid. I would at this point, yes.
The Rite Aid recommendation is interesting in view of the controversies going on about Medicare prescriptions. How do you think that'll be resolved?
Well, I think Rite Aid is showing themselves as being a real competitor in that business, and that's why their competition is complaining, and they continue to gobble up those complainers and add them to their list. And they actually claim they can make a small profit on those prescriptions, and then they make the real profit on what the people buy when they're in the stores. So I think that's a plus. Your
switch from Citigroup to Union Planters will dismay New York and delight Memphis. What's behind that? Well,
the idea is just that I've heard that John Reed and Sandy Weil are not really getting along all that well. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I hear. Any mega merger like that is going to run into some difficulties. The stock has done extremely well, and I think it just can't carry that kind of performance out in the second half. Whereas Union Planters, their problems are behind them.
Brian?
Lou, of my original picks, the one that's lagged that I still think represents good value is Neiman Marcus, a high-end retailer, and a couple of other names for the second half would be Abbott Labs, Disney, which is very controversial even as we speak today, and perhaps something like Hershey Foods.
We always like at least one Mickey Mouse recommendation.
Well, you'll get it in that one.
Laszlo?
Two names. One name in the technology area that's starting to come back, where I see selling drying up, is Compaq. Compaq Computer, a lot of problems, but again, selling's drying up. Secondly, telephone and data systems. Telephone area is obviously one that's very much interest and a lot of fly. So two additional names, those two.
One group that you were high on for a while that you soured on a bit was the drugs. What do you feel about that now?
I'm still a little troubled with that. I think that, once again, Bill Clinton is raising some issues there, and we're seeing a little bit of selling, especially in the pharmaceuticals, stocks like Pfizer and Merck, and so I'd be cautious there.
One brokerage house that enthusiastically recommended Pfizer at 150, downgraded it at 100. Is that the way they operate in Wall Street?
Unfortunately, it is.
Let's talk a little bit, since you mentioned Bill Clinton and Washington. How is Washington going to impact the rest of this year, you think, Laszlo?
Hopefully not. I think one thing you have to remember in this market has been a tremendous amount of psychology, and that when Clinton's ratings started to sag, it sort of coincided with the market sagging. And I'm not sure it's tit for tat, but I think that it's very important that people continue to feel good about the economy and about the political situation. So I wouldn't just dismiss cavalierly the lame duck issue.
You think not much is going to happen in Washington, and that's good for Wall Street?
I hope so.
All righty. There we do have to stop. I want to thank our 4 panelists.